Don't forget to mic yourself. Well, good evening, friends. Welcome to our UCC Families for Justice Summer Series. This is our session on love and inclusion, and tonight we have Dr. Matthew Clark joining us, so welcome, Matt. Matt is a psychologist and mental health consultant, among other things, and he works with LGBT youth and families, and tonight he is going to help us learn how can we be more welcoming, more inclusive for friends, family members, neighbors that we know. How can we be a community that accepts all human beings, however God has made them? So let's give Matt a warm welcome.
Thanks for having me. I've been following your church and Brian's posts on Facebook, but it's exciting to see you in person. And I love all the things that you're doing, especially with some of the things that are happening currently right now. When I was younger and I hadn't come out of the closet to anybody yet, I first saw an Episcopal church in Evanston that had a rainbow flag out of it. And I was grappling with being gay and Christian and was feeling pretty depressed and upset about it. I didn't think I was going to burn in hell, but I thought God was pretty mad at me and upset with me and didn't think that my family and friends and that I wasn't a good Christian for being gay. So I went and talked to the priest of the Episcopal church, and he talked to me about grace and told me about how not all Christian denominations take the Bible literally. So I left there with a seed of hope planted with me, but I also thought that he was this liberal of the devil person. Because while growing up in a wonderful conservative Baptist family and church, the Methodist church down the road and the Presbyterian church, they were all seen as nice, good people, but not as conservative as they should have been and too liberal. But with the UCC church, I was walking around downtown Evanston and I saw the little plaques in the grass with the comma, and it said that God is still speaking. And I thought, oh, I don't know what that means, but I really like that for some reason. So I went to the church, and then I asked in the morning, and they actually had a female pastor, which also I found a little shocking, but also kind of cool at the same time. And so I just kind of sat down and asked her, well, what does that mean? And she talked to me about how there's the Bible, and there's traditions, and ancient texts, but we also believe that God and the Spirit are moving every day and still speaking amongst us, and that things may not be set in stone or taken as literally as they had been in the past, and that God is speaking to us in our heart individually and also as a community. So that just really resonated with me, and I started going to that church in Evanston. So that was a key part of my growth and development, and so I'm grateful for the UCC church. And then when I became older and moved back here to Michigan, I found a gay campground, and then I started dating a guy in Saugatuck, and so I started going to the UCC church in Douglas. I became a member there, and Andy DeBraver was preaching there. Sal wasn't there yet, but you've probably heard Sal speak. He's amazing, incredible, so that's a cool church too. And so when I'm in Saugatuck, I always try to go there. So I'm really happy that you guys are doing this, because I think that even though there's progress being made and maybe some threats of maybe some regression in certain areas right now, that I think that it's still needed. I think especially needed in certain parts of the country and certain parts of our state. And that lots of times when people don't realize that even with progress and things change, that an LGBT person, especially someone my age and older, but even some young people in certain families or certain denominations are still carrying around a lot of pain inside of them and emptiness and kind of this hyper-vigilance of not knowing if people are going to be accepting. I mean, even just walking in here and people welcoming me and just shaking my hand outside and excited that I was here, and just like it's this really healing feeling that if you grew up kind of in the closet and full of shame and thinking that you were bad in the sight of God or bad in the sight of people that were good Christians, that can just be so healing to know other people out there that are accepting and not only accepting but also celebrate you and celebrate the work that you do. And that's a big part of my work in Grand Rapids is working with people who come from conservative Christian backgrounds, they and their parents. And I was part of Cindy Lauper's True Colors initiative this year that we're the first, what she considers a small town, and also we're the first to have a faith-based group. So I'm part of the faith subcommittee that does research just to see what's needed in Grand Rapids, and then also then with funding going out there to try to help reducing homelessness in the LGBT world. That they estimate that 40% of all LGBT homeless youth are, 40% of all homeless youth are from the LGBT community. And a great place that helps with that, one of the places, besides Arbor Circle and Network 180, is the HQ Center in downtown Grand Rapids. And I know you have other cool places out here too, like out on the lake shore that's also trying to help. And I just went to a fundraiser for Arbor Circle at City Flats, where they started a LGBT support group here in Holland also. And then part of other initiatives with Network 180 and Arbor Circle, and that have also reached out to the Lakeshore to try to help not only Grand Rapids but in the Lakeshore community with families. And we brought in a researcher named Caitlin Ryan with the Family Acceptance Project, and it's the most empirically supported program of helping LGBT youth from families. And what she does is not only helping families that are LGBT affirming, but families whose parents might not be quite on board with the whole topic or aren't quite sure what they believe or what they think, and how to keep those families together. That some good intended parents sometimes think that they either have to jump on a gay pride float or kick their kid out of the house and show tough love. So what the Family Acceptance Project does and other organizations is trying to keep these families together with supportive communication, with accepting, just keeping dialogue, and not having the feeling that you have the ultimatum of kicking your kid out of the home. So those are some things going on in Grand Rapids at the Lakeshore. I came across a quote the other day from Dietrich Bonhoeffer that I thought was really applicable to what we're trying to do and what your church is trying to do. And he said that we are not to simply bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice, or to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. That we're not only just trying to help the LGBT community, especially ones who may have gone through spiritual or religious abuse, but also trying to celebrate them and empower their families and give them a voice and give them courage to be who they really are, and also to have respectful dialogue in communities with different organizations. So this is great that you guys are doing this tonight, and with different topics, not just the LGBT topic. So I grew up in Southwest Michigan at a conservative Baptist church, but it was a very loving, kind church, and like I can remember in preschool watching the boys pounding nails, and I'd be playing dress-up clothes with the girls, and I'd be trying to figure out what they got out of enjoyment of their cars and everything, and just always knowing that I was different, developing crushes on my best friends, while, okay, cover your ears, but when the other boys in the reading tent were looking at the JCPenney catalog in certain areas, I was not looking in those areas. In the swimsuit in other areas, so I knew right away that there was a little bit of difference between me and so I kind of grew up my whole life, and not everybody who is LGBT has that, where they kind of know their whole life. I mean, it really varies in stages as far as personal development and finding out who you are, and I think sometimes that we want to believe that if you didn't know that you were LGBT your whole life since you were a kid, then maybe you're not really LGBT, or maybe this is just a stage you're going through. So I think that we sometimes have to remember that everybody is on their own path as far as sexuality and romance, and gender identity doesn't necessarily correlate with sexual attraction, and you can be romantically attracted to different people and sexually attracted to different people, that it's much more complicated than the black and white, what they call the binary world that we kind of grew up with when we were younger. And then I think, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of stuff, research with the clobber verses, because I think that your church doesn't really take the literal traditional view of those 6 verses, but I think that to educate yourself on some of that is good in talking with your neighbors and friends and family that may not be as progressive as you are. That a book that really saved my life before the internet was invented was What the Bible Really Says About Homosexuality. But then there's a shortened version, and that is put up by inclusiveorthodoxy.org. And there's a Brian has a whole PDF of all the resources I'm going to mention. So any book I'm going to mention,
we printed 16 copies too,
okay, cool.
So people can
16 copies back there, and then you can get an email version where you can click on each one of these websites and just read it. So that book really saved my life, and basically what a lot of that information says is that those verses really have nothing to do with homosexuality, that homosexuality wasn't in the Bible until 1946 in the RSV version. The word didn't even exist on the planet until 1892, and that when we think of being gay with romantic attraction, things like that, it wasn't something that was really thought of back in the Greco-Roman Hebrew times. And that a lot of those verses were really about older male on younger male, pedophilia, using a domination thing. Sodom and Gomorrah, both Jimmy Carter and Billy Graham said that, and others, that Sodom and Gomorrah had nothing to do with homosexuality, that it was male on male, kind of a domination thing of degradation that was done in tribal wartime, and still gone today. It really had nothing to do with being gay. So basically, a lot of the research just shows that these verses that many of us have been taught to believe have to do with being gay or homosexual really have nothing to do with being gay or homosexual. So I think that it may not be important for your own personal development, but I think in talking with people in the area, without going on an attack or argumentative stance, but just having some of that knowledge that there is scholarly research out there that might contradict what some of these, what your friends and family might have been taught from their church about the verses. Another thing I also like to look at is that, things change throughout the Bible. Like there's verses in Deuteronomy that say Moabites are bad, that they're bad people, don't be around them. Then Ruth was a Moabite, and she's in the line of David. Then the Uz people are evil, but then Job was from Uz, and he was the most blameless man on earth. And then it talked about how eunuchs were not allowed to go into the certain parts of the temple because they were considered unclean. And then later one of the first Gentiles to be converted was a eunuch. So I feel like things, and I know UCC, that fits in with the whole, like, God is still speaking, that things might have been one way at a certain time, and it seems to grow and change and develop. I mean, I know my sister, 10 years later, she had completely different parents than my brother and I did, but rules and things kind of change in families. We won't go into detail about that. My mom's always like, but we had more money when we got rid of you and your brother. And then Jesus also never mentioned the word homosexual or homosexuality, and that when I went to Israel with Kent Dobson in 2014, his brother, and who's gay, Stephanie Sandberg, who wrote 7 Passages, Rob Bell's sister Ruth Bell, who's big with the needle exchange and with the Red Project with HIV. The founder of Gays and Faith Together. We did a thing at Wealthy Theater, just sharing about what it's like to be gay and Christian and being an advocate for the LGBT Christian community. And after that, I went to Israel with Kent. And when I was there, it really kept touching me about how often Jesus reached out to the outsider and to people that he wasn't even supposed to be around. And that he was most critical of the people that were the most religious, that lived their life perfectly the way you're supposed to live it. And that he reached out to prostitutes and tax collectors and hung out with them. And one story that really touched me was Kent called him the naked bloody man. That it was the man that had the 10,000 spirits or demons, whatever that actually is, inside of him. So, and the pigs in the cemetery. So Jesus was around a Gentile who was naked, covered with blood, in a Gentile cemetery surrounded by pigs. That's like 5 things that Jesus as a rabbi was not supposed to be around. And it kind of feels, and not to degrade my own people, but I think that you kind of grow up feeling like you're the outsider or the naked bloody man growing up in certain areas, in certain communities when you are LGBT. And hopefully that's getting better and changing. A lot of young people in my office tell me that it's really no big deal anymore, that they don't care. Like my cousins, their sons just graduated from high school, and their father is a physician, and the 2 physicians that he is partners with, they're a married couple. So they grew up with 2 married guys that their dad worked with their whole life, and they told me, to us, the whole LGBT topic is nothing anymore. It's not even a topic. We don't even care about it. So that's healing and refreshing to hear that. And then I look at, really about Sodom and Gomorrah was also about the sin of inhospitality, that really in ancient Judaism, and when I lived in Ireland, that hospitality is a huge thing, and that to be inhospitable was a big sin. And Jesus talks in Matthew 25 about being hospitable to the marginalized, to not putting people on a pedestal because of their social status or their wealth or what they're wearing, but to reach out to the outsider, and then it's our responsibility to show hospitality to them. And then I also look at like love your neighbor as yourself. The number one rule, I mean, it's in sandstone, it's in Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, everything is do unto others as you'd have done unto you. And actually at UCC Douglas at the retreat house, when you walk in, they have a big plaque showing about how all the religions of the world, and even secular humanism, has where you should treat people the way that you'd want to be treated. And I think that that's much more key than judging people for being different than what we think that people should be. Does anybody have any questions or anything I want to throw in?
Yeah. How old were you when you went to Evanston and sort of had a different transformation there?
Well, I didn't come out to myself or to other people until I was 24, and I actually didn't come out to my family until I moved back here from New York in 2005. But I'd say that I was probably around, I worked at Elam Christian. Has anybody ever heard of that? So,
Oh my gosh, I worked there.
are you serious?
I did. And you did too.
Really? It's the most beautiful, wonderful place. It's a CRC. I was a case manager in the dormitory. And so I was 24, so I was probably around 25. I always found my own tribe. I went out to U of M and found the most homophobic, anti-gay people to hang out with. It's like I went to the most perfect place where I could have been totally myself, but I found my own people. It's funny how we can sometimes vacillate towards what we're comfortable with that may not be the best for us. I saw this sign the other day and it said, how should we live? We should live to try to live to be welcoming to all. And I really feel like, especially right now in our country, that not putting up with things that we think are abusive or damaging to the disenfranchised, but trying to be loving and kind and accepting to each other more, and to have respectful dialogue on hot topics like this. There's an organization in Grand Rapids called the Colossian Forum, and if you go to colossianforum.org, there's all these guidelines on how to have like a respectful dialogue in your church, in your organization, in your school, in your work on like hot topics. Like we were part of one on evolution, the LGBT topic, climate change. Yeah, those are the three that I know of so far. But they have a whole list of suggestions if you did want to try to have a formalized, respectful dialogue with your group or your organization. So one thing Brian had mentioned to me is how best not to be damaging, because I know many well-intended people who around me will say things like, well, they'll call transgender people transvestites, so I have to explain to them what the difference is, or even today, it's still like the homosexual lifestyle. And these are like people who think they're really LGBT affirming, so just helping them to know that we in the community don't really like the word homosexual anymore, because it's kind of, they're words that have been used against us. But then on the other hand, the community has taken words that certain people outside the community, or even people who are older in the community, kind of have problems with, such as the word queer. And if you know of any kind of colonized country or group that they take back words and they use it for them as an empowerment. So the LGBT community has taken back queer, and there's queer theology, queer psychology. So when you see LGBTQ, oftentimes the Q stands for queer or questioning, either one. But you still have to be sensitive, because some people, even in the community, don't like that word being used. So then if you talk about somebody who says the word cisgender, that means somebody who's, they relate to the anatomy that they were born with, or the sex that they were designated with at birth. So if somebody was born with male anatomy and is heterosexual, then they would be considered a cisgender male. If somebody, and then in the transgender world, if you hear like female to male or male to female, then that kind of just shows the trajectory that they're going on and the transitioning that they're going on and the way that they identify. And I just learned like 10 years ago in my own practice that sexuality and gender don't necessarily correlate. That just because you find out that somebody is male to female or female to male, you can't assume their sexuality. And that's what I'm kind of finding in my own life is like to stop assuming someone's sexuality or their gender identity. Like so often I'll meet somebody, I'll just assume I have terrible what they call K-dot anyways, but to stop assuming that everybody I meet is heterosexual. Because lots of times people be like, hey, to tell you the truth, I'm actually bisexual. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm stopping in my life just assuming to identify somebody's sexuality or gender identity. Binary is again that A and B, black and white, male and female, that a lot of young people nowadays, they don't want a label or they don't want to be put into a box. That they like to be more like what's called gender fluid, or like some days they may want to be more male, present as more female, and a lot of young people don't want any kind of label put on them. So I think what's really key is listening and asking questions and just see yourself as like a researcher of just asking them where they are, what they believe, and how they identify themselves, and what label they would like, and what pronoun they would like, and then try to use that pronoun. Like I know I find the pronoun they very hard to remember, especially since my grandma would always correct us if we used they as singular. And then I had a young transgender woman tell me that she brought me this literature in that in Old England, the original English, they was intermixed, and that we later in the United States said that they was only plural, so she corrected what I had been taught. Demisexual is someone who only has a sexual attraction to people with whom they've already created an emotional bond. So they aren't sexually attracted to somebody unless they get to know them or they have some kind of romantic feeling for them. Pansexual means that you can be, it doesn't rely on someone's anatomy, that you can be attracted to male, female, transgender, intersex. Polyamorous is having a relationship with more than one person. This one I just learned this year. Ace is now the cool word for asexual or non-sexual. So especially with like pronouns, to try to respect that and ask about that. And then, but that's even controversial because I've heard older people in the LGBT community talk about like, why do we have to make such a big deal about someone's pronoun or somebody's gender identity? And some people talk about, well, it's really nobody's business, or why do I need to share this, or why do I care about this with people? That, you know, I sometimes assume that everybody I know is totally out and proud out of the closet, but some people, you know, they consider it a private thing. I mean, not everybody walks in the room and is like, hey, I'm heterosexual. You know what I mean? Yeah, and we also don't want that to be our only identifying marker. That in Grand Rapids, these people were very well intended, but I was once at a meeting. I was sitting around a conference table, and everybody was white, middle-aged, and the topic of diversity was brought up, and they go, "We have diversity. We have Dr. Clark. He's gay." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm the token diversity because I'm gay." All right. So that was an interesting feeling, because I think sometimes, and I've heard other minorities tell me this too, that sometimes you feel like your whole identity or the way people think of you is that gay guy or that African American on the third floor or something. So that's something to be mindful about too. So how to help your child or somebody in your family? I think too, again, listening, not making assumptions, not freaking out. Because I mean, a lot of parents I think nowadays are really worried about their child's safety or the future, especially with gender identity and transgender. That seems to be the really hot topic right now, and what parents are worried about. They're worried about their child not being out of a job, not falling in love and getting married, getting beaten up somewhere, things like that. And also, I think what young people don't realize is that they may have been grappling with this their whole life, but their parents might be totally shocked and surprised when they come out of the closet, that believe that they're that it's an evolution process of their own coming out process. And a lot of parents, even in this community and other more conservative churches, they have their own risks. They're afraid of losing their tribe. They're afraid of rejection from their friends and family. They get scoffed, they get treated differently when their child comes out of the closet. So to give each other time to grow and develop and accept each other. And then I think parents can also take interest in your child's favorite YouTuber. A lot of young people have their favorite trans YouTuber, their favorite LGBT activist YouTuber. Like, sit down and just watch a little bit about them. One teenager was telling me that he was so stoked because he came downstairs to get cereal and his dad was watching his favorite YouTuber, and so he was just super excited about that. Ask about the school's GSA. Encourage your child to get involved in the GSA, because the GSAs, they lower, it's a gay straight alliance, or it might have some other like cultural diversity name with it, but lots of times young people are afraid to join groups, support groups, but once they go, they meet other people, they have a mentor, somebody to kind of coach them, they have a safe place they can go to talk about different things. And if a school has a GSA, it lowers the bullying throughout the whole school. And thanks to Ronald Reagan getting with the Bible study prayer groups in the morning, like I used to go to in high school, that it now is illegal if they have any kind of groups, it's illegal for them to say you can't have a gay straight alliance group. And they're not allowed to use the bullying reason. There's a specific thing, there's specific in the federal law saying you can't say you can't have a group because you're afraid that the group will be bullied. That doesn't hold up in court. So if they got any kind of groups, your school has to have a GSA. If there's parents and kids that want to have one. And then also, looking at your child's spirituality, or a lot of young people right now, they don't want to be marked as Christian or belong to the same denomination as their parents, or they want to be spiritual but not religious, or they may not even want any kind of spirituality. And so I think a lot of parents that I have are more worried about their kids rejecting Christianity or God or the Holy Spirit than they are about them being LGBT. So just try to encourage parents not to freak out, that it's really normal and I think actually healthy for young people to kind of branch out and find out what they believe and what is important to them, rather than just accept what's been spoon-fed to them their whole life.
Spoon-fed or force-fed?
You mean going to church 4 times a week?
I'm just saying, we didn't have, where I grew up, you really didn't have a choice.
Right.
That's wrong. You've got it wrong.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So brainwashing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember I just had Viktor Frankl's Man's Search of Meaning on my desk once. My mom was like, "Oh my gosh, you've turned so weird." I'm like, "Mom, why don't you read it? It's about a Jewish psychologist in the Holocaust." It's like, I think sometimes conservative Christian parents are afraid that their kids are just going off in this crazy cult place or something.
Question in the front?
Any suggestions for how to, and if we even should, be approaching churches that are still sending a message to our young people that it is wrong, and they are overtly doing that?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a hard place. Like, do you approach them? Do you not? Do you, like, what's the right thing to do, or what would you suggest?
And I've talked to some people in this area, and there's actually an author and a speaker that just came recently to some huge churches and Christian colleges, and they're these pray the gay away kind of people,
Yes,
and when you talk to them, they're not these, people talk about like it's hate, or you see those people with the signs. They're not like that. They come from this place of being worried about the kids, thinking like, okay, now they're finally at a place where they realize that, and Pope Francis said the same thing, that nobody chooses this. I mean, nobody would choose to live in Zealand or Genesis or Genesis. In Corinth down the road to be LGBT. And so they're at the point where they realize nobody chooses this, but they believe like you shouldn't live a lifestyle and you should be celibate, you shouldn't be in places of volunteer or leadership. And I think that does send still a really damaging. I mean, you live in this like shame and dark cloud. But I think that if we go and we try to attack these specific churches, they're just going to be on the defensive. So what I find is that when people can hear your personal story, or if there's somebody in your family that has a personal story, or even how maybe you've kind of wrestled with this and research that you've done, or talking to people, or if you believe in the Holy Spirit or God, and like what has come to you through prayer and your relationship with God. I think that can be more of a testimonial. I mean, and And I think what really changes people a lot is when they actually have an LGBT person in their family. Like I can remember in the minivan, and George Bush said that marriage was between one man and one woman, and my mom was like, well, really? Everybody else doesn't that assume? And now my mom really wants me to get married and find somebody. I mean, people can change. So.
Awesome.
And actually, and to tell you the truth, there's some really strict conservative churches here where mostly mothers, but fathers too, have formed their own underground secret support group. And even other places have changed. One reason why I left Pine Rest, I started my own practice, is because I really wanted to work with the LGBT Christian community. Now Pine Rest has two really cool, affirming, I've met them, women who run an LGBT mindfulness group and that run a support group for LGBT people and their families and friends. Pine Rest has advertised in the Pride Center's website. I mean, I think things are changing.
Do you mind quickly mentioning the names of those two therapists? I'm gonna write them down.
I don't, one starts with a K, but if you just go to pinerest.org, you can look up the LGBT mindfulness group and the friends and family support group. It's two female therapists and one, her last name starts with K. And then here in Holland with Pine Rest is Kristen Anderson, and she is a Pine Rest LGBT affirming therapist here in Holland. And she's really active with Alvin Lakeshore. And there's PFLAG, as you probably know, PFLAG here at Grace Episcopal Church. And then something good to give families, it's on that list that I gave to Ryan, but the Caitlin Ryan Family Acceptance Project, the whole manual that she's produced on suggestions for parents and family members, it's on there. And I think also self-care for people from the LGBT community, like I see a spiritual director, yoga. I mean, I'm worried about just who's going to be chosen tonight, if it's going to get rid of, not to bring my politics in, but if it's going to get rid of gay marriage. And I don't want marriage equality to be thrown out the window. So I mean, I'm living with that kind of stress on a daily basis. So I think just a lot of self-care, getting out and back out with nature. I'm part of a spiritual wilderness group where you just get out there with nature and having the Holy Spirit lead you as you go through nature. Just when I was on the last one, I was looking at this big mound of ants and just talking to God and thinking about God. And then I looked over and there was a huge box turtle, literally staring up at me. And if I hadn't been just sitting there chilling out with God and the ants, I would never have seen this turtle staring at me. And someone at a very progressive church corrected me the other day and said that atheists and secular and humanists can be just as, everything I'm talking about now, that they can be just as that way. So I'm not trying to be, I'm not anti-atheism or agnosticism. I know some wonderful, amazing people that are LGBT affirming and giving, so I don't need to come off too Jesus-y or too Christian, but that's just my background of my background and a lot of the people that I try to help come from that background. So then, how to talk to your kids. I think what helps a lot with kids, if you know, there's so many shows out there right now that have LGBT characters. I think that can help to kind of watch some of those shows or documentaries. There's great transgender documentaries. Jazz, a young girl, has written about being transgender. She has children's books. She has a reality show. I brought 3 kids' books. And Tango makes 3. It's about 2 male penguins who raised an egg and a chick together at Central Park. It's a true story. And at John Ball Zoo, there's been 2 male penguins and 2 male monkeys that they think are in a relationship together. That actually every animal species out there has homosexual couples or relations in them. It's not just humans. And then another one is Heather has 2 mommies. And then Oliver Button is a sissy. It's about a little boy who likes dance and glitter and dolls and things like that. And they write, he is a sissy, and then he enters his talent show. He doesn't win, but then the next day they write Oliver Button is a star, and they celebrate him and him being kind of a sissy or whatever, not being gender conforming. And then I brought some other books too for parents that are out there, and then the whole resource list. That's basically what I prepared for today. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Are there any other comments or
final questions, comments? we have crafts coming, so.
Oh yeah, the rock, this is a weird, like I believe this is a God thing. Okay, so I got the dates mixed up. I wanted, my sister, of course, she finds everything on, I have to say it right, Pinterest. I always say Pinterest. So, I wanted to go to Lake Huron and get these rocks, and I got the dates mixed up. And so I stopped at my house, at my parents' house, and my mom was like, "Oh, don't worry, I've got 2 big boxes of rocks from Lake Huron." So my mom provided the rocks for today. And what my sisters found, and then someone else told me that there's a whole like Zealand group that does something similar, is I thought we could take like rainbow colors, draw colors like rainbows on there, or whatever you want on the front. And then there's Sharpies that you can write just like an inspirational thing on the back. You could leave them all around Holland or wherever you want, or give them to somebody to put in their garden, or just keep it at home. And brought like string and stuff that you could make like rainbow necklaces and bracelets. I actually know how to macrame if anybody wants to learn how to macrame.
I just want to throw out one other resource. There's a psychiatrist, he's actually my brother-in-law in San Francisco, and he has started a project nationwide and does a lot of LGBTQ advocacy. He himself is gay, and anyway, he is fabulous and just came out with a 6-series video series on how to come out safely. So for people who are, it's just a great resource. So Dr. Ron Holt is his name, and they're very well done.
Dr. Ron Holt.
Yep, they're short little videos, and it's just great for people who are struggling with when to come out and is it safe and how to come out and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's
Is it through a university or just in his
he worked for Kaiser for a long time, and he actually just quit his job so that he can do advocacy. He's doing bullying prevention and prevention and stuff. So.
Well, if you ever want to reach me, my main website is theclarkinstitute.com, THE, then clarkinstitute.com. And then I also have gaychristiantherapy.com. When I left my rest, I started my private practice in Rob Bell's book, where he wrote Sex, God, and Velvet Elvis, and all that. So that's a cool. I used to go to a little LGBT-friendly Bible study in New York, and they gave me Rob's Velvet Elvis as a going rate gift. And then when I was looking for office space, I found out that he lived in my exact building, so that was weird. Like I didn't even, yeah. But now I joined a group called HRA Psychological Services in Grand Rapids. It's on East Paris and 28th Street.
The Clark Institute?
Yeah, THE.ClarkInstitute.com. I have a friend who, I'm actually writing a book as a resource book for Christians coming out of the closet and for their families. And I'm working with a friend of mine who used to be with Zondervan, DC Cook, and Harbor Christians Publishing. And so we're working on a new website and working on the book and things like that. Those are my websites right now.
Why don't we thank Dr. Clark for his insights. And I think we'll transition into, we had a question in the back. Sorry, we had a question in the back.
I think we got 2.
Oh, I missed the hands.
Yeah.
All right.
I put my hand up late, so
No
I
worries.
think I just wanted to kind of reiterate something Dr. Clark had said about listening. As a parent who's gone through having a teenager express gender identity issues, I think patience is key in that process. Not only in you as the parent dealing with your child, but also in how you communicate that to other people in your circle, friends, family, etc., and giving those other people enough time to digest, ask questions, and absorb that landslide of information. And yet, patience, I think, is what allowed us to deal reasonably with the situation that we were in.
Do your crying and panicking behind closed doors when your child's not home. Because they don't need to see that, as you process.
Right, yeah. Yeah, parents go through their own grieving process. And that I think sometimes the frontal lobe's not developing in young teenager, and lots of times they want things right away, and they want you to think exactly the way they think, and so they don't realize that you're going through your own grief and loss. And sometimes it can be a little painful for them to realize,
people aren't kind of pushing that you need to be open now, you need to see differently now,
Right.
because then it kind of becomes this toxic relationship. At the same time, like, I think there's a lot to learn from being in conversation, from hearing stories, and so have you seen that done well in other places, or how can we invite others into the conversation?
Yeah, Mars Hill Church has started a support group for parents, and actually it was parents that started it, and it meets in a home, and what they always say, well, I've only gone to one, but I've heard them say that they want it to be a safe space no matter where the parent is, even if it is a parent that's not quite affirming or doesn't know what they believe, or is really on a hard struggle with it, or does take a conservative, literal view of those passages, that they are welcome there and that they want it to be a safe place there. So I thought that was cool too, because I think sometimes we can be open and affirming to everybody unless they don't quite believe, unless they're not open and progressive. Yeah.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Marcel is still not open and affirming.
Yeah, Marcel has not taken a stance either way.
Great question. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Last call. All right, let's give another. We're going to transition to craft time. So we have some crafts. We'll give some instructions in there. There's some snacks over the side. Please have some snacks. Make some crafts. You can Instagram it or whatever. Put it somewhere in town. I love the idea of leaving rocks with supportive messages across town in Holland. I think how cool would that be to come across that in different spots. So there we go.
I was just at a church Sunday, from the pulpit they said to put hashtag and then the name of the church, so you could put hashtag UCC Holland.
Hashtag Holland UCC.
Holland UCC, okay.
You got it.